Ely Delaney as I live and breathe, man. How you been?
I've been doing good. It's lots of crazy stuff going on in the world, that's for sure.
How are your kids? How are you?
My daughter is doing awesome. She is going crazy with me. I got a lot of hectic stuff, some business stuff changing, looking at potentially moving soon. I mean, there's no potential about it. I am moving. It's just more of a date as to when I'm moving, all that kind of stuff.
All right, all right. Inquiring minds want to know, where are you moving to?
Dallas, moving
Really?
down to Dallas. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Business community is phenomenal down there.
Mhm.
And plus, I like warmer weather. They actually have a real hockey team. So, all that kind of stuff.
All right. So here is the well, I guess let's do the intro.
Okay.
Ely, who are you and where are you from originally?
All right. So, well, originally I'm from Boise, Idaho.
Right.
Born and raised there, went to a small, tiny school town outside of Boise. Once I got older, I realized it was way too small for me. Ended up in Phoenix for 18 years. Actually started in the rock and roll business. That's actually what led me down there. I did behind the scenes. I started off in audio, ended up going to lighting, did staging stuff. I've had a lot of fun in that arena. I've got one of my claim to fame is, if you're old school Rush fan, you're old enough to know Rush. Nowadays, I
Oh,
mentioned Rush and people are like, huh, who's that?
huh? Subdivisions,
Yeah,
Limelight.
yeah, but I
Yeah.
was actually Geddy Lee's spotlight operator. So I had a lot of fun with that. Yeah.
Really?
Oh yeah. Yeah. My claim to fame is that I was 35 feet above the stage sweating on Geddy Lee's head during his concert. In the middle of the Arizona
I'm
sun.
sorry.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
it
awesome.
was it was fun. It was a good time. I had a blast with it. But as you can know, it's the rock and roll world. My boss had some recreational habits, and it affected my paycheck. And you can fill in the blanks
Oh,
on all that. And so I ended up moving on, got into the computer side of things, worked for a small mom and pop computer shop in Phoenix, learned the ins and outs of how to build, how to repair, all that kind of fun stuff. And we were also a small internet provider. And I
nice.
learned the ins and outs of that, which led to me actually doing some websites, and went out on my own, started my first company, which is web and graphic design agency, and had a blast with that. Went from working out of my dining room knowing nothing to opening up an office. I had 5 employees, closing 3 to 5 contracts a week, killing it. And then I realized I didn't want to go to an office, and I didn't like having employees because it was like babysitting cats on cocaine, and I did not like it at all. So
Wait, I would have thought you at least went the catnip route, but you like skipped 3 levels and went straight to cocaine.
yeah, have you had employees before? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
so so yeah, it was pretty bad. But then I was also realized that I started getting into internet marketing stuff, and actually went to a conference in the Phoenix area and met my first mentor, and is a guy by the name of Armin Morin. And
Okay.
he did internet marketing stuff. The funny thing is, he's up on stage, he's talking about his story and telling what he did, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I bought that program. I bought that program. I didn't realize who it was. I just know I bought the program. I didn't realize who the person creating it was. And so I was actually a customer of his before I had ever known that. But I see him on stage. There's about 400 people in the room, and he is he's funny. He's making people laugh. He's teaching them stuff, like literally teaching them stuff that they can walk out and do that night.
Right.
And not just a lecture telling a story.
Right.
And I'm looking at that and I'm like, that's what I want to do. And I instantly knew it. And the funny thing is, at the end, of course, he sells his $2,000 coaching program.
Sure.
And I would say 3/4 of the room stood up and went to the back of the room that day.
Wow.
And I'm like, yep, confirmed. This is what I want to do.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
So yeah, so I got into the speaking side of things. I started doing that. Funny thing was that, I was in the rock and roll world. I grew up actually as a musician, but the reason I got
Okay.
into the behind the scenes stuff was because I had stage fright, which, yeah,
Really?
go figure. Yeah. Go figure, fast forward all these years, and I end up becoming a speaker, and I love it. But so that's kind of my backstory. right now, I have a blast with what I do. I coach clients,
Oh, yeah.
helping them how to build follow-up systems. Like speaking on stage is one piece, but it doesn't matter what you do for your business. You got to talk to people, most important thing in the world. You've got to meet people, you've got to talk to them, build relationships, and know that the sale's going to come when it's ready, not necessarily today. And so I help
Very
people
true.
build the systems that make that work. I've literally had a guy, September 16th, 2020, emails me and says, "Hey, Eli, I want to thank you for everything you've done, helping me out the last couple of years that I've been on your list. My son's got a construction company. I'm wondering if you can help me out." And I was like, "Well, of course," and starts a whole dialogue back and forth. But I go back to my CRM, my database, essentially. I'm like, what does he mean by a couple of years? He'd actually seen me speak in Scottsdale, Arizona, July 3rd, 2010. 10 years and 3 months later, he's coming back to me to refer his son's business to me. So
That's awesome.
yeah, the fortune is in the follow-up. Okay. You've
Well,
heard
yeah.
the phrase.
Yeah.
That's what it's about.
Wow.
So that's my back end story. That's all the business stuff. What else you want to know?
Well, okay. So you have dogs, don't you?
Until recently, sadly,
Yes.
they just passed away in the last couple months.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. Now your daughter is grooming.
Yes, she is a groomer.
She's a
She has
groomer.
spent her entire life with animals.
Yeah.
She originally started. Let's see. I'm trying to think of the timeline. If she did the training or the dog walking first. At one point, she had her own business doing dog walking.
Right.
And that worked for a while, but it was mostly the dealing with the people didn't do as well with her. It's like the dogs were great, but you have to deal with the human beings. Then she got into grooming and ran into the same thing. She's like, the training is more of the humans, not the dogs. And that just doesn't work. The dogs are great, but the humans can't be trained. So she got out of that. She got into grooming, and that's even when we were still living in Phoenix, which was, well, we moved here 10 and a half years ago, something like that. And she'd
Yeah.
already been grooming for a couple of years. So she's doing her thing. She's went out on her own. She still yells and screams every time she realizes that she actually learned stuff from me from the marketing side and how to run a business, which is hilarious, but she's done really well with it. She's completely got her own business, and she's booked 3 months out. So she's doing something right.
Well, okay. So I believe, if I recall a prior conversation correctly, didn't she publish something really cool?
She did publish a book as well. Everything your dog groomer wants you to know or wants pet parents to know. Yeah, so basically, as a groomer, all the things that you as the owner of your animal should know in order to have a good experience and make sure that the experience for your dog is the best. Because a lot of times the humans don't understand everything that goes into grooming. They just think, oh, you're just taking them in. It's just a haircut. It's just a bath. There's a lot more to it than that. And we're also, you're dealing with the psychology of an animal that's not quite as, well, that's debatable. Before I say this is, not quite as evolved as humans. I will say that's debatable, definitely. But and so she put this into a lot of her story of how she learned some of the things she did and how to deal with the psychology issues, things that people need to know on, in between dog grooming. What do you need to do to maintain your animal to make sure that they're in good shape and they don't
Every
come in
dog's
mad?
different. Yeah.
They are. Yeah. Every breed is different. They've got different personalities. They've got different types of skin, all the different things. A lot of people think it's hot, let's shave our dogs. That's actually one of the worst things you can do.
Air conditioning, depending on the coat, right?
Yeah, because our coats are there to actually protect them. And so you could actually give them sunburn and destroy their skin if you're not. And that's just like one example. And she wrote a whole book on it. So she's very proud of it. I'm very proud of her. She's done some pretty amazing stuff.
So your entrepreneurial bent and success has rubbed off on your daughter. So,
much to her dismay. She drives her nuts, but yeah, it has.
So let me ask you a question, right? Dad quote of the day: our purpose is to celebrate great dads. It's just what we love doing. Okay. Yeah. So what, good or bad, because I learned a lot of bad and I learned a lot of good from my dad, but from your dad, good and bad, what did you learn How has it helped you to become a great dad?
I think a big one is work ethic.
Yeah.
That really is it. More than anything else, because he was always a hard worker. You know, he's retired now, but he was always a hard worker. And he's definitely, one thing I can say that I learned from him is probably on the opposite side was learn to control your emotions, because he wasn't as great at that. So there were times where he went through different jobs. But the biggest thing was his work ethic was next to none. You know, it's like he's the one that was always there making sure that things got done. And if something wasn't getting done and needed to, he was the first one to pick it up and do it.
How do you think that has impacted your success directly, like in how you've overcome different challenges and life choices that you've made and things like that?
Well, the first thing is I don't come from an entrepreneur family. So,
Okay.
you know, both of my parents were blue collar workers, and my mom worked for Boise State. My dad worked for Courier Services, a couple of different companies there. And the one thing I found was that when I was working for other people and even hearing them, they would talk about something going on at work, and they were like, okay, you know, they want us to do this and this and this, but this would be so much better. And of course, then you have the boss who says, no, we're going to do it my way, because I'm the boss. And they would come home so frustrated with that. And I remember hearing this over and over again. And then for me going into the workforce, I had a lot of problems with that. I shifted through a lot of jobs, and a lot of it was because of that same kind of thing. And I finally got my last quote unquote job that I had was it was for a web design agency before I went out on my own completely. I'd actually kind of in between. I tried and didn't quite make it, so I went and got another job. But it was time and time again. It was like, no, I know you want to do it this way, but it's not going to work. Here's why it's not going to work. But if we do this instead, that'll make it better and it will work. And they're like, no, I'm the boss. Do it the way I say to. And then, you know, sales didn't come in, checks started bouncing, all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, okay. And eventually it was like, okay, I can't do this anymore. I have to do my own thing. I have to make my own decisions, because I have gone through multiple jobs, and literally I was never fired from any of them. I quit them because I saw them going downhill, and many of them literally did close after I left. And I was just like, if you're not going to listen to my ideas, and I always come from a place of, I don't think this is going to work. This is why, and here's the solution. Because that's one thing as an entrepreneur, and if you're, no matter where you are in business, honestly, and if you're, even if as an employee, number one key I always say, don't just disagree, but disagree, explain why, and have a solution. Absolutely. That's the key. Yeah.
Well, and I want to add to that, that, so I was having a conversation with one of my daughters earlier, and I had said, you know, I've got this idea about you girls interviewing other kids and just talking dad stories, you know, what's my dad like, and things like that, and just creating some content that would help, I don't know, inspire kids, or maybe even dads would take lessons from it.
Yeah.
And the point she started to make was that she thought it could work, but the way she began it was looking at the negatives instead of first looking at the positives. And so, of course, I'm looking at the positive. I'm thinking, what, you know, how well could this happen, and how well could we affect the lives of dads by getting kid feedback, kid to kid conversation, and then talk about the obstacles that we have to overcome. So basically, we came at it from two completely opposite directions, but it's the same point. And of course, we disagreed about that. There was that friction, and that happens all the time when you're talking to an employer or a boss, manager, whatever the case be, and they have their way of wanting to do something, not being flexible enough. When you have you ever, okay, let me back up. Working with your daughter, do you recall any times when that conversation occurred with her where you basically said, of course they have their own way of doing something, but approach it in a certain way?
Yeah, very actually, yeah, multiple times. More recently, before she completely went out on her own, she was working for somebody else. And it was still a kind of an in-between situation, but not quite fully 100% independent yet. And the person the boss essentially, there were some things that they just weren't doing that didn't make any sense, and they were frustrating her. And I'm like, and so she's coming to me mostly to vent more than anything else,
Yeah.
which is cool. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I would go back and like, okay, have you said this? You might want to approach this way.
Yeah.
Because as a business owner, here's probably the type of thing that's going through her head. And so some of those kind of things, and some of it she does, some of it she doesn't. Sometimes she takes bits and pieces. They're kids, so you know. And I look at this with anybody nowadays. I've gotten old enough now that it's like if you want my advice, I'm happy to share it with you. I'm trying to give you suggestions. Take it or leave it, whatever. I don't care. You know? And so we kind of do that with her too, because half the time, you know, as your kids, they're going to do exactly the opposite anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But no, she's actually done really good with that, and I like we can have those conversations. And the cool thing for me, and it's makes me proud that she'll come to me with those kind of things, going, okay, this is what's going on. Here's what I'm thinking about saying. What do you think? And that was actually something that came to me even just recently, just in the last month or 2 months, as of this recording. She had a situation. She was like, she actually sent me, like, it was a reply to, I think it might have even been like a snarky customer or something. Somebody that really should just be pushed away anyway, because they were not a very nice, pleasant person. But I mean, we always have those exist. But she actually came to me and said, this is what I'm thinking about responding with. Can you take a look at it? And so I did. And, you know, I was like, okay, this is good. There's a couple little tiny changes, but she did really good with it. And there's another one. I'm like, that is perfect. Don't change it. You know, so she'll run stuff by me even now, because, you know, whether it's not really intentional, but I think it's with a lot of experience over the years. A lot of times I can see things at a more objective standpoint.
Sure.
And I always try to be that way as a human being. I try to run things from an objective role. And so it's taught me to be that way, where a lot of people can't. It's one thing I have to say, I'm very proud of being able to do that, because it is difficult sometimes.
Our biases always get in the way, you know?
Yeah. So she'll come to me with stuff like that, which is cool. And I love it, because it gives me a chance to, you know, try to help her out in a way without being an overbearing parent. You know, it's like, here's what I would suggest. Give that a try. Let me know what you think. You know.
So let me ask you a question. If you had a young man who was a new dad, relatively new dad, like you've got kids somewhere in the first, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years of life.
Okay.
Or even somebody, I mean, your daughter is 20s?
No, she's 30.
Really?
Yep.
Dude, I never knew you were that old.
Most people don't.
To be frank, you always struck me as if you were in your like late 40s. Okay. And I've known you for a few years now. So, okay. I just feel like I'm getting older. So
we all are. It's okay.
If we had a new dad and we sit him down, and unsolicited advice, we're just having a conversation, what might be, I don't know, a few pieces of advice, or maybe one key piece that you'd say, do this and you'll live happily ever after, without a magic wand?
Well, there's no such thing as that. So that would be the first bit of advice right there. There is no such thing as the happily ever after. You will mess up as a parent. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay, that's just reality, because every adult is different, every parent is different, and every kid is different. And the world changes so much, and you're dealing with so many factors even outside of your control, from their friends to the school to what's going on in the news, everything. So there is no perfection. There's no way to create perfection in being a parent. My number one piece of advice: always remember they're a kid, but treat them like a sentient being. Don't coddle them. Don't try to shy them away from things. Let them experience. And when you talk to them, don't talk to them in baby talk. Talk to them like a person, because they are a person, and they're going to react and they're going to grow into the person that you treat them like. The one thing about my daughter is we always treated her as a human being. Even when, if she's 8, she's throwing a temper tantrum, our conversations were, okay, why are we doing this? What's going on? Say what you need to say. And let's hash this out. And there will be times where you'll lose your cool and you'll be wanting to pull your hair out.
Hey.
I wasn't going to make the reference. I thought about it, but I wasn't going to. So you went there.
Thanks.
But even from a young age, I always just treated her. I treated her not as an equal, but kind of. I treat her just like a person, just like a person, not as I have to be the adults and you have to do what I say because you are the child type of thing. There are times where it's like, no, do what I said, quit arguing with me. That's the parent side. But for the most part, we're having conversations, and it's just, I never sugarcoated anything. I didn't hide anything. I just treated her like a human being. And I'll tell you, she's turned out to be one of the most amazing human beings I've ever seen. She can lose her cool just like everybody else does, but for the most part, she does very well. She has been amazing at talking to people. It's funny because, her abilities to communicate alone make me proud, because she's the person that she gets, like, her customers, they are repeat customers and they are there for life. That is because they love how she treats them. She knows how to talk to them. They know how to talk to her. She knows how to treat their dog. She pays attention to those details. Even her first real job was working for a small coffee shop. Well, actually, before that, she worked for a paintball place. She shouldn't have been supposed to be working. Yeah, paintball. She ran the cashier. She ran a cash register. And the funny thing about it was she learned, it was one of the first things that she did. She was 15. Yeah, she was 15. She wasn't even actually supposed to be working there, but the owner was like, yeah, I'll pay her to come. She's smarter than all those guys are anyway. Let me bring her in. And the funny thing is she had them all under her thumb. She was getting all these boys, which of course, she's a cute little girl. And so of course the boys are following around anyway. She had them doing all the chores, all the stuff they're supposed to be doing. She delegated 90% of her own work to these other guys and got it done. When it was their job, they never would even do it. The boss loved her.
I bet.
Because she got stuff done. But that was because I taught her how to communicate with other people and how to hold yourself. It's funny. And I think this is really appropriate for this. A friend of mine, years ago, when his daughter was born, he actually called me up. He goes, okay, dude, I don't know what to do here, because I have a daughter and I don't know what to do with a girl. And it was hilarious because Morgan, I don't remember how old Morgan was at the time. But he knew she had turned out really good. She was still fairly young, but he's calling me up and I'm like, okay, dude, I'm going to tell you exactly what you do. You teach her to stand up for herself. You teach her to be a respectable human being, and definitely throw in teaching her sarcasm, because it will save her in so many situations. And I said, I'm going to be honest with you. And I have other people, because my daughter is a pretty girl, and I've had since she was 15, I've had people like, oh, she's going to be a lot of trouble. Give it another year. She's going to be a lot of trouble. I'm like, no, she's not. I'm not worried about it at all. To be perfectly honest, you know what I'm worried about? I'm worried about the first guy that wants to be her boyfriend. That poor kid is going to be in a world of hurt. And I have never had an ounce of fear of her, not once. She can hold herself like you would not believe. She is strong. She is witty like you wouldn't believe.
Really?
I mean, you and I've talked, so you know my sarcasm when it kicks in.
I don't know if you know this, but sarcasm is a spiritual gift.
It is. It's a way of life sometimes. And she is just sharp. And it's great. And the funny thing is, you know, from my standpoint, growing up around that, it was great because she scared everybody away. I didn't have to worry about any boys. She scared them away. And so it's like, it was hilarious because I taught him, I told him, I'm like, just teach her to, you know, sarcasm is a good tool to use to have fun with it, but it will intimidate people who might want to take advantage of her. And it gives her the power to control the situations around her. And when you can give her that, you know, especially for a daughter, and it works for both, you know, guys and girls, but especially for a daughter, you give them that skill and they're unstoppable. They're just unstoppable. And that's, to me, that's something I'm very proud of. I'm very happy with the way she's turned out. And you know, I'll put her up against anybody any day and she'll take them down.
So for new dads, it comes down to be ready for the things you can't be ready for, and teach your kids sarcasm.
Yep, pretty much. Start with that. You're good to go. Yep. Start there. The rest of it will just happen. And remember, at some point, they're going to hate you. It happens. Don't grow out of it.
Yeah.
Nothing is more, nothing is better than being the parent that says, I was being here to support you, so I didn't say what I felt, but I knew this wasn't going to work the way you wanted it to. So if I had said something back then, right now would be the point when I would say, I told you so, but I didn't say it, so I'm not saying that now. And
I did that to my wife the other day. She glared at me.
Yeah, I did that to Morgan, and she said bad words at me. It was quite entertaining.
And then you said what?
I laughed. I just laughed. That's all there was to it. It was great. So she can say whatever she wants. She knows that. And it boils down to, you know, we can have fun with this, and that is very, very important. You have to have fun with it. You have to, you know, have fun with your kids, and it's not a matter of having fun with them as kids, but have fun with them, no matter what age they're at. It doesn't matter if they're 3 or 30. You still do the same thing. Morgan and I we still goof around. We play games, we play card games, and we have all kinds of fun conversations. And you know, I love her to death. She's awesome with that. But at the end of the day, the things that are most important, and these are things that for me hit home, is teach them these two things: kindness and respect.
Yes.
Those two things alone will get them a long, long ways. Because if they can keep that in mind, it's amazing what they'll overcome.
I saw my 10-year-old do that with a gentleman who was walking into a building as we were walking out. I didn't expect her to do that. When she did that, I just smiled. It was awesome. All right, last question.
Yep.
I have been the beneficiary of some of your coaching in the past. And if you had a dad who was trying to either build a business or get out of the rat race through creating a side hustle and then growing that, what would be, I guess, a couple of the key things that you would counsel them to do to lay that foundation? Number two, how could they reach you if they wanted to touch base?
Okay. So the first thing, if you're watching this on video, if you're not, then I'll just say it so you have it. Right above my head, it says #meet cool people. Okay. that is my mantra. That is what I live by. Meeting cool people is one of my favorite things in the world to do. It may even be my favorite thing to do. And it really boils down to the people that you meet are going to get you anywhere you want. You have to get out there. You have to have conversations. Real conversations create partnerships, relationships, joint venture partners, and of course, sales. And without relationships, without the people, you don't have any of those things. So you got to get in front of more people and more of the right people. And that's the little caveat to it. You got to make sure you're in the right room with the right people. The more people you meet, the more opportunities you have. So that's like a critical piece. The second thing is, look at the number one question for any business. What is the problem you are solving? Don't fall in love with the product, because the product may change. Just because you think it's awesome does not necessarily mean that everybody else does. So what is the problem you solve? And then go talk to those people. See what they say. That's more critical than anything else. Don't spend a lot of money on branding, websites, fancy stuff until you have that figured out. Because when you have that figured out, then you'll know when you're in the right place, because there's nothing more heartbreaking than seeing an entrepreneur that's put 5 or 10 grand into their business with their logos and their websites and all the stuff. Come to find out, nobody really wanted it. It sounded cool, but nobody really wanted it, or they just didn't want to pay for it. So that it really is the most important thing. The second thing with that is, as you get started, build the database early. Get some form of CRM system. CRM is customer relationship manager. It's basically your database of how do you keep track of all the people you meet. Because if you don't have that, you will forget, you will drop the ball. I mean, my database has over 5,000 people, and the vast majority of them are people that I've literally shook hands with.
Nice.
But I'm never going to remember all those people by myself. My brain is not that big.
No.
I mean, some people think my head's really big, but my brain does not fill as much as people think my head is.
I wasn't going to go there.
It's okay. I put that one out there for you. I mean, it's kind of the reverse side of the hair thing. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So that is really important, is that your database is the lifeblood of your business. And so get a CRM system, start with something. I've got some suggestions. If somebody wants to ask me the questions, I'm happy to talk to them about it. And start storing all that information, all the people you meet, start following up, because the fortune is in the follow-up. It really is. You're going to have, I shared the story at the very beginning of a guy who came back over 10 years later to refer his son's business to me. That's huge. Yeah. So people aren't necessarily ready to buy today. They might be. Some certain 10% of the people might be ready to buy today. The other 90%, not even. Probably 10% of them will never buy from you. But that 80% in between could be anything. It could be from tomorrow to 10, 15 years down the road. So just stay in touch with them. And that's what your database helps you do.
So I said that was going to be the last question, but the one part we didn't get a chance to really answer was, how do people reach you so that, if they want to follow up or even just get to know you, what do they do?
Yeah. So easiest way to get a hold of me, connect with Ely.com. And Ely is E-L-Y, not E-L-I. You go to connect with ELI, it goes to some dude that does commercial real estate in the middle of nowhere, Midwest or something.
You're not biased.
No, I was so bummed because I always when I buy a domain, I got it with both spellings, and this guy had the other one. I was like, darn it, what am I going to do now? He sells real estate of all things.
It's not like you can buy it because he needs that.
Yeah, no, and I totally get that. But connect with Ely.com, again, with a Y. Connect with Ely.com. You can, if you're interested in the business side of things, you can look at, I've got some free stuff up there. All my social media links are on there, which, by the way, connect with me. Seriously, whatever, Facebook is usually where I spend the most time, but it doesn't matter what platform. Connect with me, but don't just hit the friend request or connect or whatever platform you're using. Send a message with it. Say, you heard me on this show, because now we have a connection. Now we have something in common. On Facebook, I get 10 friend requests a day. Wow. And many of them will sit there for like 30 days because I'm busy. But if somebody sends me a message and says, hey, I heard you on the show with Phil, let's do this, you know, now I'm like, okay, we have combination or commonality. So let's do this. Now we're going to start a conversation. So start with that. And reality, if any of the business stuff actually resonates with you, there's even a spot right there you can book on my calendar. I'm very approachable. I like having cool conversations. So I said, meet cool people. I love that conversation. So you can book a call with me. It's not a sales pitch. It's just a conversation. And if it leads to potentially working together, that's awesome, but that's not what it's about.
Cool. Eli, it's always good to see you, man.
It's good to see you too. It's been a while.
It has been.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll sign off. Guys, thanks for watching. If you like what we do here, please like, share, and comment below. Appreciate you much. Take care. Bye.
Take care, my friend.